Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, folks. Michael Zuber, one rental at a time, back with the man, the myth, the legend, Millennial Mike. How you doing, sir?
I'm doing good. As always, happy to be here.
There you go, man. So actually, I've seen a lot of kind of collab-based questions for you and me about property management. Obviously, Dion and Matt, the three amigos, self-managed. We're going to do a deep dive on that next Saturday. Now you are part of the Four Musketeers, I hear, which is pretty cool. So why don't you and I talk about property managers? Because those other two guys, they don't know anything about them.
Yeah, they're too cheap to spend the 10% to manage some freaking prop. Yeah, they want to add that stress. They can't claim that they're retired when they're out there working still. All right, you're the only one who's officially retired. Okay, so this question came from our normal segment where we address questions that come from comments in your videos. Peter Bedford asked this question. I thought it deserved its own video. And he says, both you guys use property managers. Could you please do a collaborative video on how to choose property managers and how you manage them? So Mike, why don't you take your first swing at it and just tell us how you chose your property managers?
Well, the short answer is in the beginning, horribly. I literally fired the first five. Some of them had my properties for a year, some of them for 3 or 4 months. So again, I say this as a guy who suffers plenty of scars. So I guess a couple of thoughts on it, knowing that. First and foremost, property managers are salespeople. And what do I mean by that? Let me just be very blunt. They know what you want to hear. They know what you want to hear. It's not the first time they're getting the 7 questions you're going to ask them. They have a scripted answer. So realize that these property managers are going to tell you what you want to hear, and you're going to feel all warm and fuzzy. It's their job. So what I have come to realize is you need to work your network, right? I talk about out-of-state investing as being risky. You do that. It's because of that, right? Most people just, hey, I found 3 property managers in the phone book. I'm going to call them all 3. I'm going to pick one. Wrong. Not what I would do. And again, this is a guy who did that 5 times badly. What you need to do is you need to work your network. You need to talk to real estate meetups. You need to do this. You need to do that. You need to find people who bet their money on that property manager. Right. And oh, by the way, oh, Michael, come on. I just asked for references. I talked to references. Again, they know what you want to hear. Maybe they give you new landlords that haven't experienced the full year yet. Maybe they got buddies or friends. You don't know. So again, you got to work your network. You've got to ask favors. You got to ask 17 people. Eventually, that one property manager will stand out. And then the other thing that I found as a trait that I love, and this is what I anchor on, is I want the owner, the principal. I want them to be a real estate investor. I don't want them to be an accidental landlord. Oh, yeah, of course, I rent my home. It's my first home. No, I want them to have units. I want them to think, act, and invest like investors. Like if you're a real estate agent, and I say this having fired 3 of the 5 were this, their job as a real estate agent is to keep the lights on with property management. It's not their focus. If the market gets hot, they're going to go get the commission. If the market gets cold, they're going to deal with banks and REOs. I did not have a great experience with my 3 property managers whose main income was being a real estate agent. They just operated differently. And when I needed them, they ghosted me. So it's kind of first of long ramble.
Yeah, so I agree with you 100%. When I tell people, and we talk a lot about out-of-state real estate investing on my channel, when I tell people the number one thing you have to do to be successful in out-of-state real estate investing before you build the team of the property manager, real estate agent, contractors, wholesalers, before you do any of that, you have to build a network of other trusted investors. People who aren't trying to sell you anything and aren't going to make a buck off of you, who have nothing but your best interests at heart. And so then people, well, how do you make friends with these people? How do you meet them? You can do it all online. Okay, there's Facebook groups for every city or real estate market in the country. You can join for free and comment and start making connections. The next thing you do is you go to YouTube and you type in Gary, Indiana real estate investing advice. And wow, you find people in every market making videos about it. You leave comments, you connect with them, you get answers. The best way to find the property manager. Mike said, yeah, people will look in the phone book. For anybody who's not over the age of 40 and doesn't use a phone book and doesn't even know what the white pages are, you might be saying to yourself, yeah, I'm going to go on Google and look for 3 property managers. And yeah, it's all right, Mike. You dated yourself. You look great. But here's the thing. going to Google and trusting the Google reviews, which can be bought and paid for, or, Angie's List, which can be bought and paid for, or anything like that, it's not worth your time. What you need to do is chat with the network you've been building of other investors who ideally have been there for a while. And like Mike said, you're going to start to hear the same names come up that are good and the same names come up that are bad. Once you start to recognize that pattern, then you narrow in on these property managers, and then you call them and you have your Googled boilerplate list of questions you're going to chat with them about. But what's important first is to get the referral from someone who's not trying to make money off of you. That's how you're going to find that good property manager. So next question for you, Mike. How do you manage your property manager? What does your interactions and calls and conversations and emails with them look like?
Yeah. So this is obviously, again, I've been doing this for almost 20 years now. This was really at kind of the inflection point for us. Was we started to have basically scheduled phone calls, right? For a long time, you have 1 or 2 units. It's kind of sporadic, right? We got to a point, it wasn't very much. I think it was 10 units, maybe it was 12 or 15, but less than people would think. I started managing it like I would manage one of my sales reps. It's like, we're going to have a call. I think it was like Thursday at 9 a.m. every for 30 minutes every week. And certainly didn't make every of them. I was busy, they were busy, but we made more than half of those every month. And we go through the same things. Any bids, any evictions, any collections. Sometimes the calls were 5 minutes. Sometimes the calls were 25 minutes. But I love having a setup call. If the call is brief, so be it. Nothing going on, great. Everybody paid, great. In the call.
That's the best call.
Yeah, I love those calls. But yeah, I would set up a call. Second, I own expectation setting. You have to be clear, right? I expect this. I expect this. Like there was a time where I wanted to approve everything over $50, and then it was $100, and now it's $250. You just got to build trust and no expectations. The other thing that I did, and the reason I fired the first 5, is I did spot inspections. A little harder to do out of state. I get it. But I could tell you, I would tell them I was coming one Sunday, and then I would tell them I wasn't coming the very next Sunday. And a couple of these folks, it was like a bomb went off. It was like so remarkably different in 7 days. So what really happened? Well, the day before I was coming, they sent somebody to, go tell the tenant not to park on the lawn. The owner's coming. So they didn't park on the lawn for 2 days. As soon as they didn't think he was coming, he parked on the lawn. Mm-hmm. Right. So again, so I like surprise inspections. I have Section 8 rentals a lot. So I love the Section 8 inspections. I love Section 8 inspections, not because they cost me money, but I get to check the checker. I get to make sure the property manager is doing their job and I'm not, borderline slumlord. So,
right.
Yeah, it's about expectation setting. And again, I generally give everybody 1 mistake, but not 2. Right. For whatever that's worth. It's just, this is real money involved. And now certainly I've been with the same team for a decade or so, have 1 person that handles everything. I'm certainly not as rigorous as I used to be, or I could be. But yeah, I mean, it took years to kind of build that communication style. Yeah.
Yeah. And you want to get to the point where you don't have to do quite as much work, where you can trust people. And that does take time. Again, the benefit of starting out with the hard work that some other investor did by finding the right manager, and then you get to piggyback off of that. You do get to skip ahead, but you don't get to skip all of it. You still have to do the good work and check and make sure that you're not just letting things slide. One of the problems that I've had with my property manager, and this has been a little bit of an ongoing experience for me and some of my network who also uses this individual to manage properties. They do a pretty good job with, I would say, about 85 to 90% of the stuff that we need getting done. Payments come in, but there's some things that are frustrating. And number 1 is communication. Now, I've never been one to hold this against them too much because they come from a different generation than I do. And so emailing after hours isn't quite as common. Texting isn't quite as common. And I do see that I sort of get a better response when it comes to just making an actual phone call. So what you need to recognize is that, especially, if you're younger like me and you're like, yeah, dude, I just text and you send an email. And if you don't get a response back in an hour or so, then you kind of are weirded out by it. But not everybody checks stuff with as much consistency as us. So, it's worth it to make a phone call. But the point I'm trying to make is communication is extremely important when it comes to your property manager, because things get broken, people don't pay. If they're not communicating that to you, you need to figure out why. As Mike said earlier, they're salespeople. They don't want to give you bad news. They want to give you good news. But sometimes you might have to go find that bad news for yourself. So the experience I've had with this property manager has been mostly good. But I've been asking myself, could it be better? So I went out and who else gets recommended? The next, I have like 6 properties or 7 properties with one manager. And then I decided to do a little demo test with someone else, see if they're any better, see if they're any worse. And I've actually had an even better experience with them so far. But again, I don't want to just quit over here because I'm not having a bad experience. I'm just having a better experience. But here's my question for you, Mike. When it comes to, let's say I decided to make the change and I'm like, you know what, I'm going to move everything I got. How do you fire a property manager? Because my main concern is, well, what if there's some sort of retaliation? What if they tell the tenants something? What do you do in that situation?
So I've fired a lot of property managers. And what you haven't asked, I don't think I've ever actually covered on my channel before. There was about a 5-year period where I had 2 property managers.
Okay.
Maybe it was 4 years. Maybe it was 4 years, where we basically had our portfolio split in half, right? 50% here, 50% there. And the reason we told ourselves that was a good idea was we had what I call the oh shit factor, right? They got hit by a bus. They got hit by a bus. We had a plan B, right?
Right.
Unfortunately, one of those options got really busy selling real estate, and his investment in his property management arm was nothing, and service started to fall off a cliff. So at that point, I gave him one warning, right? We had a heart-to-heart with me and the owner, like, hey, this is going on. And then he just pushed me off next month. And I'm like, we're done. You just call him up and fire him. You have to document it. There's a 30-day period.
Right.
Property managers lose people all the time. So it may be the first time you fired a property manager, but trust me, they've been fired lots of times. And oh, by the way, they've gotten others. So it's actually a pretty streamlined. Like, I fired a property manager who had dozens and dozens of our units. The other property manager was hired. They got in communication, copies of leases, this, keys. Yes, I'm sure there was some nonsense going on, but your next property manager will start reaching out immediately. So it's a less of a headache. It's a hard conversation if it's your first time. But yeah, it just needs, like, if you're getting better performance, a better rate, blah, 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 and you're making more money, it's not the first time they've been fired. So I wouldn't worry about it.
Okay. That's actually good to know. So I'm going to ask a question here that's a little bit, it's on topic, but it's a little off topic. One of the things that a property manager does that really benefits the average person who's investing in real estate, and as I attend real estate meetups, the Dion hosts, I go to his local meetups, I've heard this question asked multiple times. People are afraid of having hard conversations, not just with a property manager, but with tenants.
Yeah.
They don't want to raise rent. The tenant comes in, they're going to be late. There's always a story, and it's hard. People, it's nothing against them. They're nice people. You know, they want to help. They want to be generous. They want to assume the best in other people. But that's how you get taken advantage of, which is a good thing to hire a professional for, because you expect them to be professional. So it is hard to have that conversation between you and your manager, but also between you and your tenants if you're self-managing. So Mike, I want to ask you this question. How and when did you learn the skill to be able to have a hard conversation with someone? Because I think it really is a skill. It's not easy to do it tactfully.
Well, thankfully, that started for me when I was on full commission as a teenager, right? When you're on full commission, you could be fired every month for lack of performance. You learn very quickly to identify somebody who's just kicking tires with somebody's going to buy it, somebody who buy the maintenance agreement, all these other things, they'll buy the widgets and the extras. So yeah, I mean, the beauty about being in commission-based sales is you eat what you kill. It is your performance. Nobody else is there. So again, real estate for me is the same way. I mean, does it make me feel good to say you have 5 units, or does it make me feel good to say I have 5 units that produce $2,000 in positive cash flow? I'm going to go with the latter versus the first. And cash flow is on you, right? If you have a property manager who's doing okay at 85% of whatnot, but the other 15% costs you $200 a month, that's your $200, not theirs. That's your $200. So again, you need to call them up, say, hey, these are my expectations. We're not being met. They know. You don't even need to say, if you don't do it, I'm going to fire you. That doesn't need to be said. But after you've documented that and it happens again, then, if you've done the work and you got a plan B, execute. It's your $200. And that's how I've always looked at it. It's not theirs. It's mine. And it's my responsibility to protect that 200 in this example.
So I really think that, you have to recognize, if you're going to be a real estate investor, whether you're going to self-manage or use property managers, you're the CEO, you're the big dog, you're in charge, you're the captain, you're guiding the ship. The buck stops with you. You're the one who's going to have to do it. And I'm extremely grateful that I became a police officer at 25 years old. And I'm going to explain why. I was very much a people pleaser. Love to get along with people, very easygoing. I still think I'm pretty easygoing and get along with most people, but I had a problem with standing up for myself and, and not just always saying, yes, I'll help. And yes, I'll do, and always do everything for everybody else and never be able to say no. But when you become a police officer, what happens is, you might feel bad for this person who just did something that's illegal. Guess what? I don't have discretion, buddy. You did it. You're going to jail. You're not allowed to do this. You're not allowed to break in. I know you got a sob story. You grew up in a crappy situation. You don't get to break into people's houses and steal from them. We're putting handcuffs on. We're going to jail. And so after having hard conversations, and believe me, I've had some hard conversations with people sobbing their faces off, or people who just tell me they want me to make this YouTube polite, self-delete myself. We had to keep it YouTube appropriate. They want me to delete myself. When you have hard conversations like that, I hate to say that it's made me numb, because that just sounds so callous, but it's helped me build a muscle of, yep, sometimes people are just not going to like stuff, and they're just going to be angry, and maybe they're going to hate you, or they're going to talk trash about you. But if you're doing what's legal, what's ethical, what's fair to you, you've given them their chances, you still can be generous. You just have to learn how to have hard conversations. I learned it through becoming a police officer. Mike learned it through having very realistic financially, if you're not going to make money, then dude, I'm on to the next thing. So figure out how to have those conversations. Last question for you, Mike. Last question. With property managers, are there any immediate red flags that you would say, don't do business with this person, or something that jumps out as an absolute do or die, don't do it?
Yeah. If they make it about price.
Okay.
Yeah, again, that's a red flag to me. Again, when property managers come out and they try to tell you they're going to be the cheapest or this or that, whatever, I actually don't want the cheapest property manager, because that means their headcount's not going to be right. They're not going to have the systems, the investments. Yeah, if I had a property manager come out to me and say, I'm the cheapest in town, blah, 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 that would run away. Run.
Yeah, and to his point, I want you to think about this. Okay, let's say you're bringing in $2,000 a month in rent, right? They're going to charge you just 10%, right? So that's $200. Okay, 12% is going to be what, $220, and 8% is going to be $180 or something like that. Is it really worth it to save $20, maybe $40, but you have somebody who isn't as professional, isn't as good at what they're doing? I would rather spend the extra money, because I promise you that 10, 20, 30, 40, $50 you're going to save will pay dividends on the back end if you get the right person, keeping the property in good condition and making sure that they're getting the right tenants, and you're not going through evictions, or if you are, they're at least streamlined and professional. I promise you the 20, 30, 40, $50 you save up front is not worth it on the back end when it comes to just doing one problem tenant eviction. So
well said.
Mike, I think that's all we got on this video. We're keeping it short, but maybe if we could in the future do a deep dive on it like you suggested. Other than that, that's all I got for you.
Folks, again, let me know in the comments below. One of the things, on my channel, I'm starting to do deep dives. We've done a deep dive on buy box, 50, 40, 10. We just did house hacking roommate style. Next up is house hacking units with Matt and Dion. If you want Mr. Millennial Mike and I to do a deep dive on property managers, let us know in the comments below. Because again, a deep dive is going to be 60 or 90 minutes on Saturday. So if this was enough, great. If you need more, let Mike and I know, and we'll get something scheduled. Thank you for all you do. And Mike, where can people find you?
Google, YouTube, or Instagram, Millennial Mike, and I'll see you guys there.
Awesome. Thanks, buddy.